The iconic Iron Throne is forged from the swords of the first king's enemies, but not a single Stark sword is among them. Created by Aegon the Conqueror when he first subdued and united the separate kingdoms of Westeros, the throne was forged with dragon fire from the swords of those that had conquered. House Stark escaped this fate by being the only ruling family who bowed to the Targaryen conquerors, rather than fight until they were overcome. When Aegon came to Westeros, House Stark was headed up by Torrhen Stark. Although Torrhen called his armies to him, he met Aegon and his armies and dragons at the Trident and realized that should he fight, his men would be slaughtered. Rather than lead them to death in battle, Torrhen chose to bend the knee to Aegon, swearing fealty to him as king. For this, Torrhen would go down in history as the king who knelt, but he saved the lives of thousands of his men and became named Warden of the North under the Targaryens. They also kept the swords, so the throne was forged without them. The Bran Stark that we know from the series is named after the first Stark, the founder of the house, Brandon Stark, also known as Bran the Builder. Brandon Stark lived in the Age of Heroes, and was one of the first men. The legendary founder of House Stark was the first king in the North. Bran the Builder was responsible for the creation of several of the most famous structures in Westeros, including Winterfell, Durran in Storm's End and possibly High Tower at Old Town. Although some Meisters argue that Bran the Builder and the founder of House Stark must have been two different men, the common understanding is that they are one and the same. The Night's King, leader of the White Walkers, was once a man and may have been a Stark. We learned that the Night King was created by the Children of the Forest as a weapon against the first men back in the Age of Heroes, which means that man had to have come from somewhere, and was presumably one of the first men himself. When it comes to the Night King, Old Nan said that he was once a Stark of Winterfell, that he was a brother to the King of Winter, and that his name was Brandon. Legend also tells that he was the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, who fell in love with a woman from beyond the wall and brought her back to the Nightfort to rule there as king and queen. He was eventually defeated by Brandon the Breaker, another Stark, and Joramin the king beyond the wall. The Stark sigil is the grey direwolf on a field of white, and the direwolf is the mark of the house. Most fans believe this animal to be a fantasy, much like Daenerys dragons. However, these direwolves have a strong basis in real-world breeds, both historically and in the modern day. The direwolf was originally a name for an extinct species of canine which lived during the late Pleistocene. Like George R. Martin's version, they were extremely large, although we can't speak much to their intelligence. In the books, direwolves were only believed to exist north of the Wall before the Stark boys found the puppies outside of Winterfell while out on a hunt. Ice was a Valyrian steel greatsword and an heirloom of House Stark. It had been in the possession of House Stark for generations and was kept in a special scabbard crafted from the pelt of a wolf. Ice's service to House Stark ended when she was dishonorably used to behead Lord Eddard Stark for supposed treason on the orders of King Joffrey Baratheon. Following which the blade was kept as a trophy for a brief time before Tywin Lannister had it melted down and reforged two new swords from it. The two swords that resulted were Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper. Widow's Wail remains with House Lannister and Oathkeeper has returned to House Stark's service as the weapon of Brienne of Tarth.